Hello, can I have your attention? Thank you very much. Welcome to all of you. I'm Nicola Jennings, I'm the director of the Athena Art Foundation, and we are absolutely delighted to partner with the Broadwick tonight for this hopefully first event of many, where we sort of bring our arts knowledge and our arts enthusiasm together with the Broadwick's beautiful hospitality and this wonderful crowd of people like you coming to join with us for this. We're so grateful to the Broadwick for hosting us tonight, and I'd like to say a particular thank you to Andrea and Emma, who've worked really hard and made this all happen so beautifully, and to obviously all the team that work with them. We're also delighted to have Gonzague Mézin tonight as our guest speaker. I'm going to let Gonzague introduce himself in a bit, because his trajectory and who he is such a fascinating story that rather than give you a very dry mini CV, I think it's better that he's going to talk about this as part of his presentation to us. But just for now, I will tell you one thing to whet your appetite. He calls himself on his card, he is a créateur d'objets rares, a creator of rare objects. So I think that's a pretty exciting title to have. And he also works very closely with Versailles, the Chateau de Versailles in Paris, and he will, and also the UK Friends of the Versailles. And tonight we have Stephen Sobey here with us from the UK Friends of the Versailles. So this event, we're also delighted to be partnering with them, and we hope that we'll be able to do more events with them, because we share a lot of, at Athena, we share a lot of common ground. So briefly, just to tell you, so Athena is a digital-first charity. We are quite new. You may have seen a card. I haven't got a copy in my hand. Can I? Thank you. So you may have received this card when you came in. It has a QR code which links to our website. It tells you a little bit about who we are. But we are basically, we set up a few years ago. We're a very young charity, and our mission is to try and engage more people with pre-modern, pre-20th century art from all around the world. And so, as you'll see, we have a website, we have a YouTube channel, we do a lot on Instagram, and we've just, I'm excited to say, we've just done the soft launch of our first online exhibition, which is called Goya and Africa, where we're working with African schools in South Africa in particular, to try and to really look at how a lot of contemporary African artists like Yinka Shonibare, William Kentridge, and hopefully Michael Armitage have been very influenced by Goya. And so it's a very cool website. We'll be launching it fully in about in a few weeks' time. I very much hope that that this tonight you'll enjoy yourselves, and you'll want to come back to future events and follow us on social media. And but if you would like to know more, please speak to Luca Mitchell or myself later. And we'd love to involve you in other things that we do. So the order of play tonight is that Gonzague and I are going to talk, mainly Gonzague. I'll ask him a few questions for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions for sort of 10, 15 minutes, depending on how many questions there are. And then we will go back to chat and eating and drinking and having a wonderful time. But I'm sure that this is going to be wonderful as well. And I would just like to ask you very kindly to switch off your mobile phones, because I think we all agree that we really want to give our full attention to Gonzague. And also the event is being filmed, so it would be a bit awkward if mobile phone conversations or ringtones started going off in the middle of it. So if you do need to have a call, could you please go out into the foyer? We'd be really grateful. So without further ado, Gonzague, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but I know you're going to talk about Lignereux, the company which you revived a few years ago, and you're going to talk about Versailles. But first of all, will you tell us a little bit about you and how you became who you are?
Yes, thank you very much, Nicola. I'm so grateful to be here. And thank you to all of you for being here. In a few words, I'm créateur d'objets rares. Back in 2016, I revived a sleeping brand called Lignereux. Lignereux was a marchand mercier, basically a créateur d'objets rares, a dealer and designer and agent in Paris and London in the 18th century. And the brand was legendary. Lignereux's clients were Marie Antoinette and King George IV and the Tsar of Russia and the King of Spain, and quite a few English aristocrats. And the brand then went to sleep for 200 years, and I revived it back in 2016 with the ambition of continuing this amazing adventure of creating art objects. Conceptually, it's a little bit like Karl Lagerfeld and Chanel, except I'm not imagining dresses and handbags. I'm imagining and dreaming art objects, contemporary art objects. And this is really an exploratory approach, because I really view creation as an ongoing process. For me, an art creation is a bit like a letter that is posted, and then hopefully someone else will take it and create new things with it. And so that's also my approach to creation. I didn't train as an artist. My sort of academic and career path is a bit odd. So I did a business school in France, which is called HEC, which I found very, very boring. Because I was bored to death, I went to the Sorbonne to study art history in parallel. That's where, as an art historian, I bumped into Lignereux. I discovered Lignereux, and I sort of fell in love with this brand and with the objects, the original creations of Lignereux. And then when I finished my business school, so that's back in 25, I specialized in cultural matters in HEC, and I had a law teaching about sleeping brands. And that's when I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if someone one day revived this sleeping brand, this beautiful sleeping brand? And then I went to work for almost 10 years for Hiscox, the art insurer, the Lloyd's insurer specializing in art insurance. And then after that, I revived Lignereux, and I ended up being the artist of Lignereux, although I didn't train as an artist. But first I started working with a designer who was a wonderful person, but I felt this person wasn't sort of embracing the challenge with as much as I hoped, and I ended up designing the pieces, and that's what I've been doing since 2016. And in a few words for what we've been doing, so the first new Lignereux creations were exhibited in Les Arts Déco, which is now called Mad Paris, which is like the V&A in Paris. That was in 2017. And then there was another exhibition in a wonderful place called La Maison de l'Armateur in Le Havre, in Normandy, which is one of the very few 18th century buildings that were not destroyed in the bombing of Le Havre at the end of the Second World War. And then I worked a little bit with a wonderful art dealer, English art dealer called Adrian Sassoon, who took me to TEFAF, the European Fine Art Fair in Maastricht. I also worked for a few years on the fringe of TEFAF with Van Cleef & Arpels. We hosted dinners where we're showcasing high jewelry by Van Cleef and art objects by Lignereux. And then there was the odd years of COVID, which were production years for me, so it was in a way quite, it worked well. But that delayed my big solo show of 2021 to 2022, and that's when I showed 24 works in a very good space in Geneva, in Switzerland. And that was followed by this wonderful invitation by Versailles, who asked me to design the conclusion of their last big annual exhibition, which was all about Louis XV, Louis XV.
Will you show us some pictures?
I will definitely, yes. So I thought I would maybe speak a little bit about Versailles. So Versailles is probably a name everyone knows, but maybe not everyone has been to Versailles. and if you haven't, I strongly suggest that you should go, because Versailles is an absolute experience. Versailles is this huge place. I think there are 700 rooms, which was, it started in the 17th century, but it's been work in progress ever since. The scale, the magnificence, the audacity of Versailles, I think, is proven just by the fact that there is now an English Versailles, a Spanish Versailles, an Italian Versailles, a Belgian Versailles, and I can't think of any other place which is being used as a sort of description to explain beauty and magnificence. What I mean when I say there is an English Versailles, an Italian Versailles, a Spanish Versailles, a Belgian Versailles, there are absolutely exquisite and gorgeous chateaus in other European countries than France, which are pretending that they are like Versailles, Versailles in their own, in a different country. But just to, I guess, mirror this, I can't think of any French Windsor, or that simply doesn't exist. So, and to me, Versailles is really, in many ways, Versailles is the matrix and the starting point of so many things in architecture, in fine art, in interior decoration, textile, and in so many things have been experimented in such a masterful way in Versailles. So it was a wonderful honor to be asked to work there. On this slide, I've tried to show what really, for me, summarizes Versailles. It's difficult because it's as big as a whole. It's like a town, really. It's absolutely huge. So it's a huge town with little sub-towns everywhere, and everything's different. And in many ways, it might sound a bit not respectful when I say this, but in many ways, I think Versailles is a little bit, in principle, like Disneyland, in the sense that it had to be a place where crowds would flock in constantly, so it had to be very robust, and there had to be a real surprise, a lasting surprise at every corner. And in that sense, it's a bit like Disneyland before Disneyland. But so I really strongly advise that you should go if you haven't. But so to summarize Versailles, for me Versailles is, of course, the Hall of Mirrors on the right, and what is called les grandes eaux, the fountains shows. Versailles is called even the City of Waters, because Louis XIV had an obsession for feasts and waters, and he got his engineers to devise absolutely extravagant waterworks, which were artworks, really, where water was sculpted. Every water jet, in fact, tells a story which is linked with the vegetation around it, the sculptures, the colors, everything is coded. It's like a whole artistic program, so complex and so satisfying. And so that's what I sort of drew from to imagine the conclusion of the Louis XV exhibition. Now, telling just a few words about Lignereux. So Lignereux was this creator of art objects in the 18th century, specializing in furniture, clocks, art objects, so candelabras, anything precious, spanning from jewelry to furniture, really. The original clients of Lignereux were, as I said, Marie Antoinette and George IV, and then Napoleon, Josephine, Jeanne du Barry beforehand, basically any top-notch art collector of the time in Europe would one day or the other go to Lignereux's shop. Funnily enough, at the time, it's a bit like today, but the shops, the boutiques of the Marchand Mercier were tourist attractions. They were in the guides for tourists, a bit like the flagship of Louis Vuitton today, things that you must see when you go to Paris. And so that was a way also to ensure that the big art collectors would one day or the other knock at the door and shop in those places. So Here I'm showing just so on the left, the guéridon was commissioned by Napoleon to Lignereux. The vase in the middle. So that's a wonderful story about Lignereux. So in the days of October 1789, Queen Marie-Antoinette summoned Lignereux to come to Versailles and to collect all her private collection of art objects and to basically protect it and shelter all those objects. And in the center you've got an exquisite vase. It's one of a pair, actually made of petrified wood. So it's wood that was that became a fossil basically over thousands of years, with extravagant mounts in what is called ormolu. So ormolu is an old French word which means milled gold. It's basically bronze that is gilded with mercury, fire gilded. It's a very complicated technique because of mercury. Mercury is so dangerous. You get cancers when you manipulate mercury, and it makes the gold melt into the bronze. So it's a very specific way of gilding the metal. And on the right, you've got a clock. So this one is from Les Arts Déco, but there is the twin clock in the Royal Collection. I mean, for copyright reasons, I didn't reproduce Royal Collection images, but the twin clock is in the Royal Collection, and actually the biggest ensemble of 18th century Lignereux works is the Royal Collection. So now, when I revive Lignereux, what do I do with it? Difficult question, and as I told you, I really envisage creation as an ongoing process where I should take things from the past and try and project them into new creations. So these are examples of the objects we've made since 2016, where we really try to sort of reinvent the signature shape, the signifiers of Lignereux. So the snake, the butterflies, the flower, the sacred scarabs, and so on and so forth. We project them into new things, also exploring new materials. So it's not only ceramic and ormolu, but it will be straw marquetry, perspex in some objects, light, and incorporating new things. I mean, basically, it's about being a créateur de Gérard in 2024. So it's a new world, and it's also about. I mean, the key question I'm asking myself is how do I make museum piece, a treasure, relevant to our days? Now I'm going to just tell you a few words about Louis XV, because it was how I was drawn into Versailles. Louis XV was the great-grandson of Louis XIV. Believe it or not, it was not his son, but Louis XIV's son died, his grandson died, and Louis XV became king at the age of 5, which was kind of terrible when you think about it. And Louis XV was a strange personality. He had a dreadful childhood, which is called une enfance de cimetière, so sort of cemetery childhood, would you say, or graveyard childhood, in a huge palace of Versailles that was completely gloomy. The feast was over. Once Louis XIV died, I think it was 2 years of national mourning, with all the walls dressed in black. I mean, really, when you think about it, for a 5-year-old child, it's kind of terrible. And probably as a result of that, Louis XV had immense sexual appetites. He's known for that. Probably there is something about life, you know, the need to carry on with life, I don't know. Anyway, so getting married was complicated. Because he was not an easy party to marry, basically for political reasons. He ended up being married to Marie Sinclair, who were older than him, and it started wonderfully. I mean, I think they had 10 years of marriage they were best friends and lovers and spouses. It was all wonderful. After 10 years, 10 kids. And the doctors in the end said to the Queen, next time it's either you or all the time, you know. So she ended up just shutting down her door to the nose of the king. And that's when he started meeting other women, and there were quite a few of them. I think there are 69 of them with a name.
No.
So the most two famous ones are portrait here, so it's not the Queen here. It's on the left Madame de Pompadour, and on the right Jeanne du Barry. Funnily enough, portrayed by the same painter. And believe it or not, the portrait on the right, Madame du Barry was topless, and the painter was asked to dress her up. But the first version, she was. And so those women were wonderful patrons of the arts. And in a way, the reign of Louis XV was the epitome of French, the French art, really. There was even an exhibition earlier in the 20th century that was called A Moment of Perfection of French Arts, because all the arts were probably at a height somehow, you know, be it painting, architecture, objects, porcelain, costumes, everything was like stretched at such a wonderful level. I'm mentioning this because so basically my brief, when Versailles approached me, they say, will you please do something to conclude this exhibition? And I thought very much about the legacy of Louis XV. And what sort of stopped me was the fact that less than 20 years after Louis XV passed away, his grandson was guillotiné, basically. There was no more kings in France, less than 20 years after that. So, in a way, I don't know if this is an English expression, but the reign of Louis XV was the Song of the Swan song, you say that?
Swan song.
Yeah, the Swan song.
Swan song, yeah.
And for me, one apocryphal quote of Louis XV summarizes it all. It's Après nous le déluge. Louis XV would have said this, Après nous le déluge. So if I try to translate it, it means after us may come the deluge, may come the flood.
Blood.
Yeah. Basically, I don't give a damn about what will come after me. It's like a small, it can be seen, well, probably he didn't say it in reality, but it sticks to him because it's a good summary of.
That was in cake, you didn't say that.
That's, yeah, exactly, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it summarizes, I think, on the one hand, his indifference to the real problems of his people. And in a way, it looks like a prophecy of what would come next. You know, basically the end of Versailles. And so that's the name of the installation I created, Après le déluge. Sorry. I'm going to tell you more about it now. So, inspirations to start with. And I told you I always start from the past, and in particular from the 18th century. And so there were three main inspirations for this large installation. First, the Galerie des Glaces, the Hall of Mirrors. Secondly, les Grandes Eaux, and in particular the fountain of the Neptune fountain, which is the biggest. So, as I told you, Versailles is the city of water, so there are sort of extremely complex fountains following a program which is all around mythology. And you go from one god to another, or from one anecdote, mythological anecdote to another. And the Neptune fountain is the biggest fountain. You see it on the right. And it's the only one that was inaugurated by Louis XV rather than Louis XIV. And in the middle, I'm showing a pair of perfect objects, which are aubergine glazed Chinese ewers mounted in ormolu by Pierre Goutière. This pair of objects belonged to Queen Marie Antoinette. They were part of her private art collection, and those objects were sheltered by Lignereux during the Revolution. And I'm also showing underneath the ewers a detail, a fraction of a small, what is called a table volante, flying table. So this model, in a way, is the link to Louis XV. This model was created by Lignereux and his partner Daguerre for Jeanne du Barry, so the latest mistress of Louis XV. And the legs of the table are bamboo-shaped, like the ewers actually. So the stem of the bamboo are utilized in the installation.
Can I ask you a really quick question? I'm fascinated that you managed to actually hide many of these objects during the revolution. How did you do it?
I think people spoke a lot, and as soon as the Queen was guillotinée, he handed over everything to the French state.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So it went to the French state.
Yes.
And then that's how it's found its way back to Versailles.
So the ensemble now is split between the Musée Guimet, because there were lots of sort of Chinese lacquers, Japanese lacquers, wonderful things. The Musée du Louvre. The petrified wood vases with the snakes, the serpents, are in the Musée Camondo. And this pair of perfect objects actually is on the art market.
So some of it did get onto the art market.
I can whisper you I can whisper the name of the owner to you, but John. She would hate it.
I don't think I'll be in the market for them. It might be above my budget slightly.
So once, yes, I started drawing. So these are some of the sketches of the work. My idea was to build some fountain shows made of porcelain and embleau and mirrors. This installation, in a way, is a love letter to Versailles, and it also highlights the ambivalence of Versailles, because I think Versailles in itself caused its own end somehow. Once the Versailles fruit was completely ripe, well, it was time for the end of Versailles, basically. And that's what this installation is about. So this is the installation in place. It was in the last room of the Louis XV exhibition. We were in very good company, because you can see on the left a monumental chest of drawers, which belongs to the Wallace collection. It was in the bedroom of King Louis XV.
You can see that in London, at the Wallace collection, which is just behind Selfridges, if you haven't been.
And it was the first time ever that it left the Wallace collection and that it came back to Versailles. So quite an event. And after the show, actually, there was a private ceremony. I was not invited, but there was a private ceremony where they put the commode back in place in the room. There were a handful of like a super selective, happy few people invited to just witness this.
This is where it should be. And then it went back to the Wallace collection.
And so, Après nous le déluge shows 20 fountains of porcelain and ormolu. So it's 20 because 20 times 3, they are reflected on the floor and on the wall with the mirrors. And 60 years is the number of years of Louis XV's reign. Very long reign, absolutely, because he started at the age of 5. And then really these fountains, for me, are a depiction of the moment of perfection of French art, and also the joyful indifference of every privileged person at the time for less privileged people. And you can see then, I mean, I will show you details afterwards, but once the feast is over, once the water falls down, you see letters, gilded letters reflected on the floor, and the gilded letters tell the words of the first words of the Declaration of the Rights of the Citizen. So, les hommes naissent et demeurent libres et égaux en droit. Men are born free and equal in rights, which is in a way the sort of act of birth of the French Revolution. I mean, in principle, it's the end of privileges. So the whole enterprise of building this installation was as extreme as Versailles is. It was 10,000 hours work, and at least 10 workshops involved, with a ceramicist, bronze makers, gilders, cabinet makers, bronze fitter, and so on and so forth. The wonderful ceramics are made by an English ceramicist named Tanya Gomez. I've been working with Tanya since 2016, and she's a joy to work with. And she's accepted to. I was a bit obsessed with the shade of aubergine, so this blue which is slightly purple, but not completely purple and not completely blue, which was very rare in the 18th century, and I wanted Tanya to sort of crack the secret of aubergine, which is not a blank shade, but it's actually vibrant, and there are things happening inside the shade. And this Tanya cracked in a way, this secret, by applying, I think there are 4 or 5 glazings and in total 5 firings of every porcelain piece.
Must have cost a fortune.
Everything was completely mad, and I was very, very fortunate to be supported by the Lignereux Adventure works with art collectors who support the making of the works.
Gosh, so this is private collectors who...
Absolutely.
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Versailles didn't give us a penny. They allowed you to dream, and they said if you can fund it, off you go.
And have these now dispersed into these private collections?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are there any in museums anywhere?
Not any of those, but I have one of the works I exhibited in Geneva in 2022, which entered the Royal Collection actually, which is in the private apartment of King Charles in Windsor, which is very, I was really touched because he owns the biggest ensemble of 18th century Lignereux works. So in a way, as you say, the loop is looped, you know.
We could have to petition here to show it to us.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's fabulous.
So what I might do now is show you, I don't know about the sound, but I've got a short film. Do we still have time? Do we have 5 minutes or is it?
I think, yeah, we have, yes, I think a quick 5 minutes, and then I think we should, I would like to ask you what's next, but, and then I think we should open to questions. That's important.
You know what? It doesn't seem to be working, so never mind.
Well, maybe we could put it on our website.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
That would be, so if you send it to me, then you can,
Absolutely.
if you have the QR code,
Yeah.
you can watch it on our website.
It does show the
Yeah.
extravagant craftsmanship behind the making
Yeah.
of the works.
No, it's amazing. I mean, it's very interesting how you linked it to the rights of man, droit de l'homme. You know, and I think your idea that it was a bit like a flower or a plant that got so ripe that it had to burst and it had to give way and create everything had to go back to zero.
It's fair to say that when you say Versailles to a French person, it really triggers very conflicting emotions. Awe, and of course it's shockingly beautiful, but it's also the synonym of kind of shocking privileges. So Versailles has everything in it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the thing about private patrons is that art is an ecosystem. I don't know whether any of you are collectors, but we need collectors. We need them because they fund these objects, and then at some point the objects then do go into museums, and it's a sort of ecosystem. So it may seem like a rich man or woman's privilege, but eventually a lot of these objects do end up in places that we get to see them. So I think I'm going to start petitioning King Charles to see your object. Wish me good luck. But can we just conclude, is what's next, Gonzague?
What's next with Lignereux? I've got many projects in the pipeline. Objects, I'd like to do artist jewelry, sort of object paintings, murals, furniture as well. And I'm lobbying museums to get into museum calendars, basically. And I hope to be able to share news soon.
The V&A.
The V&A, or so many wonderful places in England and
Yes.
in France.
Well, I'm sure it'll happen soon. Well, thank you so much. That was wonderful. Would anybody like to ask, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Gonzague?
I would love to hear just a little bit about how you make those. I mean, I'm sure this is what the video is about, the water spout. Like, how do you freeze that?
Oh, it's all sculpted. So I initially sketch it, and then I work with a 3D sculptor in my team. And in the 18th century, the way it would have been done is initially you have to create a maître modèle, sort of master model, which is the positive of the shape.
The mold.
Well, before the mold.
Right.
So you've got the initial, like the real shape, the positive, and then with that you can create a mold. And in the 18th century, the master model would have been either sculpted in wood or modeled in clay, which is completely impractical today because when this happens, in fact, you depend on someone's interpretation. And I don't want to depend on someone's interpretation, I want my dream to come true. So I work with my 3D sculptor, and I don't expect of, I love him, he's a wonderful person, and I don't expect him to be creative. I want him to be technical and suck into my brain.
Might call you a control freak.
So, yes, well, or an artist, I don't know. And so once the sculpture is where I'd like it to be, there's a final cut, and off we go. And so with 3D printing, we can print in resin this master model, which is then utilized to create molds with the negative, and then it's lost wax casting, which is made with, I mean, because I want perfect casts, I have this done by bronze makers who actually do jewelry. So it's jewelry techniques applied to sculpture, but then there's no what they call porosity. There's no bubbles, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it can be fire gilded. So because it's all gilded with the mercury gilding that was utilized in the 18th century. There's only one workshop that still does it legally in France, because mercury is so toxic, horribly toxic. So they work with masks, etc. And so what's a bit, what's really painstaking here is that you can't create such a, this is a 70 centimeters high, because you can't create those flowing water shapes as one shape. So in fact it's probably 20 different shapes that are cast separately and then brazed and chased and polished and finally gilded. Once they are gilded, the gilding is doré au mat, so it's matte gilding, and then there will be areas that are going to be burnished, so it's the brunissage, burnished with pierre d'hématite, so it's like agata stone, which is pushing the gold, and which then turns those areas into shiny areas. And then you've got this wonderful dialogue between matte and shiny, as it was in the 18th century Roman monks.
I was going to say, it's really techniques that have been used since the 15th century.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's wonderful objects, art objects made in the court in Paris in 1400, which are made with quite similar techniques. So these are amazing.
Meticulous pieces. How long does it take to make one in order to draw like one that you adore?
It sort of depends on how big they are, but I mean the total installation took 10,000 hours. But so there are 20 works. Some are more and some are less. This one is this is Tour de Force, you know, it's like the big one. There are 3 of them of this model, and the little film that I wanted to show you shows how it's made.
Yes.
Hi. Many years ago, I worked with the School of Parfumerie in Versailles, and I wondered whether you'd ever considered doing anything around signature parfum for Versailles.
Around what, sorry?
Like a signature perfume or smells and scents.
Yes.
Studying the history or the Histoire de Versailles, you know,
So,
it's fascinating what you've shown us. And
believe it or not with Versailles, but I mean, because I didn't train as an artist, I've got a very free approach to art. I like to mix the senses. And in my solo show in 2022 in Geneva, I worked with Henri Jacques.
I know.
So
Yeah.
Henri Jacques is like the Fabergé of perfumes. It's like the jar of perfumes. The job really, initially, historically, is to create single scents. You know, like how do you say this? Pièce unique. You know?
Unique.
Unique. Yeah.
Yeah.
For a
Fragrances.
for a king in the Middle East or whatever. And I asked them. I mean, because we have the same kind of obsessions, they sort of understood what I was doing. And this solo show in Geneva was a celebration of life around the story of the three fates in the Greek and Roman mythology. So three sisters who were deities and who were starting and carrying and then cutting the thread, the golden thread of life. And I asked Henri Jacques to imagine the sense of each of the three fates. Including the last fate, which is basically death, you know. And I told them this must be, it's not decorative, you know, this is art. So I'm happy for it to be disturbing.
It's never going to smell good all the time.
Exactly. And that was amazing because it's one-of-a-kind perfumes that only appeared during the solo show, that the visitors could experience, but that no one could take with them.
I did a set recently for an actor that played Henry VIII. In fact, the film was just launched in France and coming to London
I
I
think
think
I
in
know
June.
you speak about.
But it was when he was at the end of his life, so he smelt of gout, sick, blood, poo. The worst. I mean, he's not disgusting, basically. But you know, when the actor has to play, he has to get into the role real. So it was repulsive. But but sadly, that was what was happening in history at that time. Henry actually smelled fine because he always had a handkerchief that smelled of rose that he would have here. But all of his servants and everyone else had to deal with it.
But it's interesting that, I mean, there should be more exhibitions which involve smell. I smell. I know that the Maritz House in The Hague did one a couple of years ago where they gave you different bottles of scent, but unfortunately it was during COVID, so they had to send it in the post. And I tried to get it, but they wouldn't send it to me because of Brexit, you know. They wouldn't actually send it through. Yeah.
I mean, I've just done one actually, an exhibition at Air Phillips in Mayfair. It ended like a month ago, but it was the smell of rain on earth.
Oh, no.
And it was like a rainstorm basically.
Scent is so evocative.
Yeah, it has different meanings and everything else, but you know, it's fascinating, and I love the the perfumery school that you have in Versailles, and it's beautiful.
Maybe this is a joint venture in the making. You know. Any more questions? Great, well thank you all so much. Thank you for being patient and having your drinks later. I think we've so much enjoyed Gonzague's talk. We'll be captivated. So thank you again, Gonzague, and thank you again for Luca's over there. If anybody wants to ask, Luca, just wait. Most people know Luca, but just in case you don't.
Shall I say a few words about the UK Friends of Versailles?
Yes, please do. Yes, UK Friends of Versailles. Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not UK Friends of Versailles, but Stephen here will be able to maybe tell you a few words.
Yes.
Hello.
So, because Versailles is such a big and endless project, the charity is being set up in the UK to help raise funds for projects around Versailles. And this project in particular is around the portrait of Madame de Pompadour, so the sort of art patron who's a mistress of Louis XV. And here is her portrait. And Stephen maybe will, if you want to.
I don't want to add, but if anyone would like to talk about it or find out what we're up to, then please come and see me. She was basically the Prime Minister of Louis XV. She hired and fired ministers, and she was perhaps the original Iron Lady for France. So if anyone would like to talk about that, come and see me. I'd love to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks again to Broadwick and Andrea and her team, because it's been fantastic, and it will go on, I think, being fantastic. Still, the night is young. Enjoy yourselves.